Good morning, everybody. Pastor Nate Mormon repping my Mount Lebanon gear. Disciples, there's leaders. We have a great message to share with the world. We have a great message to share with the scholars and the students in our school that we're disciples of Jesus who have been called by Him to be heirs of eternity, who then are servants in the world. Disciples, heirs, leaders. That's who we are. This is what we do. And so these devotions are meant to help you remember who you are. You're an heir of eternity, and you're called to be disciples of Jesus and servants in the world. And that's one of the things that Paul is teaching us about. Today's devotional thought is coming out of 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 10 through 16. Again, the narrow context and very simple meaning of 1 Corinthians 7 is that Paul is talking to husbands and wives. And the particular problem or the particular challenge that husbands and wives were facing in Corinth was that these two people got married, and before that they were unbelievers, they were pagans, they were non-believers. And what happened, by God's grace, this was a beautiful thing. What happened sometimes was one of them, a husband or a wife, became a Christian. One of them became a follower of Christ, and the other one didn't. That was the happy thing, was one became a believer. The sad thing was the other one didn't become a believer. And what that introduces into a marriage, and if you're in a marriage or any sort of relationship and you're a Christian and the other person is a non-Christian, a non-believer, there's gonna be introducing some tensions, because as a Christian, your worldview, the way you see life, the way you experience life, the way you do life is going to be different. The worldview of the non-believer is going to be different. They see things differently. They experience things differently. The worldview is different. Values are different. Morals are different. Priorities are different. The differences and the more committed to following Jesus, the more deeply we sunk our roots into Christ, the more different it is before the believer and the non-believer, the Christ follower and the one who doesn't follow Christ. The more deeply rooted the believer is, the more tension is going to rise up in a marriage, because you're really on two different paths. And the temptation for the believer in that relationship is to say, hey, we're on two different paths. I'm out. This is too hard, right? It's difficult. It's a challenge. So I'm out. And what Paul is saying to them in this entire section is that just because you're a believer and they're not a believer doesn't mean you can get out. Right? Now listen, I said this yesterday and I need to say it again. If you are in an abusive relationship and you're a Christian, or you're not a Christian, if you're in an abusive relationship, if you're being mistreated and hurt, get out. Please be safe. Get help. Get support. To call somebody. Let somebody know so that you can get the help and support. I think during these days of COVID, when everybody's home, I've read reports about how there's an increase in abuse. And if that's you, please reach out. Please reach out to somebody. Please reach out to me. Please reach out to the other pastor at Mount Lebanon, Pastor Paul Krieger. Please reach out so that we can walk with you and figure out how do we move forward as a follower of Jesus in this. But if that's not the case for you, if there hasn't been unfaithfulness or adultery, if there hasn't been abuse, if there hasn't been desertion, Paul says if they want to stay, then you should stay. If there's no desertion, what is the Christian looking for? And what I want to set before you today as Christians who are married, perhaps to an unbeliever, or Christians who are married to each other, what I want to set before you really today as just followers of Jesus is a simple goal. Do whatever you can in your marriage. Do whatever you can in your family. Do whatever you can in this world to bring as many people to heaven with you. This is what Paul says specifically to husbands and wives. He says, how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? One of the primary reasons that Paul tells them to stay is not because it's going to be easier, not because it's going to be better, but because as you stay in that relationship, you have an opportunity to save the other person. right? So often when things get tough in a relationship, we're quick to say, I'm out, right? We talk about on Facebook, we talk about cutting people out of our lives. We talk about getting rid of toxic people. And there's wisdom in guarding our hearts and guarding our lives so that the people we let into our lives are people who are going to influence us in a positive way. But do you realize what happens when you cut people out of your life? We got to guard ourselves, but do you realize what happens when you sever a connection with, especially with a non-believer? You realize what happens if you sever a connection with a spouse or a child or somebody else. What you're really doing is you're cutting off an opportunity for you to share Jesus with them. So I'm setting forward this marriage goal for you. Do whatever you can. Do whatever you can to share Jesus with your spouse. I'm setting forward this family goal for you. Do whatever you can so that you can hug your kids into heaven. I'm setting this neighborhood goal before you. Do whatever you can so that your neighbors know who Jesus is and they follow him with their whole life. Do whatever you can so that heaven is full with your family and friends. So that when you get there, you get to greet them and they get to greet you. There's nothing more important for our lives, nothing more important that we do with our time than that we work tirelessly and relentlessly to get the gospel to as many people as we can, so that we're going to get to this in a couple of days, so that by all possible means we might save some. So hold up a new goal for your marriage. Hold up a new vision for your marriage, a vision where you and your spouse, where you and your children, where you and your friends, where you and your family, where you and all the people that you bump into on a daily basis, where you're all in heaven together. Hold up this new vision for your life, a vision where you're all hanging out with Jesus for all eternity. That's the goal that Jesus has for us. This is the reason he died. This is the reason we have life still on this earth. This is what we get to do. So the Lord bless you as you seek his kingdom and help as many people as possible know who he is. So have a great day, everybody. We are disciples, we are heirs, we are leaders, we are a community for the community with Jesus as our heartbeat. So have a great day, everybody. The Lord be with you all and grant you his peace.